What if we need to tell you something?
Berta, I think we're live, and you are speaking, Berta, so you should mute your microphone. Hi, guys. I don't know if you can hear me and see me. The live started a little bit earlier, so we're doing some checks to see if everything is looking properly. I cannot see questions, so what I have to do, I guess, is I have to go to my YouTube page and wait a second. Oh, here it is. Let me just check. Hi, Melissa. Hi, guys. Everything is good, Luca, says Christoph. Or Krzysztof, I think it's because it's Polish. Let me do, yes, okay. Everything is working properly. I think we're almost ready to go. In 3 minutes, we're going to start the live officially. I just wanted to tell you that I have, as usual, selected a couple of questions that you guys have been kind enough to send me in advance. So I'll go through those. And of course, I'll go through all the questions you're going to ask in this live, or almost all the questions, or just a part of the questions, because normally I cannot keep up, honestly, with how many questions do you ask? Samim asks, ciao, come va? It's going well. As you can imagine, here the weather is beautiful. There's a lot of light. It's a very nice time to be in Rome, but in a little bit I will fly to Munich and then off to Poland. So this is the last, sounds a little bit dramatic, this is the last live from Rome, and then I will probably carry my equipment, or I will make do to stream live from other parts of Europe. The next Q&A is going to be in Spanish. So this is the last one of the batch of 5 live sessions in English, and then we're going to do some Spanish for those who speak Spanish or for those who are learning Spanish. Hi, guys. So what's a guilty pleasure of yours? Gelato. Just like right around the corner, I go and grab my ice cream. So let me see here. Questions started pouring in. Happy to join another one of your lives. I really enjoy that. Thanks. I really enjoy talking to you guys. It's a real pleasure. So I would start to, one last thing I wanted to say. Berta and Kevin, they're my friends, and they work with me. They're going to moderate the chat as usual. If you can, please post comments in English, and do not post the same questions over and over because it, messes up the chat a little bit. Having said that, we still have 1 minute to go before we start with the questions. Hola, saludos desde Perú, venezolana en Perú. Muy bien, Ana. Ani. Gelato is irresistible to most human beings. I do know some people who don't like gelato, but for the life of me, I had to stop because I like the gelateria, or gelateria in Italian, around the corner is one of the best in Rome, and it's more than a guilty pleasure. Just it gets crazy if you start. Then as far as I'm concerned, when I start, I never stop. So that's my problem. Hello from Lisbon. Hello from Rome. Sergio says hi to Kevin. Ali, interesting question. Let's start with this one. That has nothing to do with language learning. Do you dance? Yes, I like moving my body to the music, but I'm not a dancer in the sense that I've never learned to professionally dance or anything. But yes, I do like dancing. So let's start with a couple of questions here, and then I'm going to move to some of the questions that I have on this piece of paper. Hi, Luca. Have you read books in Hungarian? I have started reading a book in Hungarian, but I haven't read a lot of them. I tried to read simple things, but I just realized that reading books in Hungarian is still too difficult. I think I read 2 years ago a bilingual book, English-Hungarian. I should have it somewhere there. But for those who want to start reading books and literature in another language, I always recommend either that you read a simple book, or a book you'll have already read, or a bilingual book, something that is comprehensible, because reading books, especially nonfiction books, is quite difficult. So Marco De Martino asks me in Italian. I ask you guys if you can ask questions in English, but I'll translate. Ciao Luca, mi chiedevo cosa pensi della tua lingua madre, usi qualche strategia di mantenimento? Hi Luca, I was wondering, what do you think about your own mother tongue, Italian? Do you have some maintenance strategies? Well, I read the newspaper every day, and I occasionally read books in Italian, and I talk to my friends and family in Rome. But the truth is that if you want to keep Italian to a very high level, if you want to keep a very high standard in your own native language, you have to proactively work on it. The fact that it's your own native language does not guarantee that you're able to keep the same level, because every single language degrades if you do not use it. So in my case, I read a lot. I read the newspapers, especially because I read a lot of nonfiction books in English. But I try to keep Italian, I try to stick to it, because Italian is my native language. It's an important one. So it's as important as all the others. Now, let's address some of the questions here. On the first one is Loïc Bondroit. I think he's French, but he opens his question by Cześć, Luca, which is Polish. Hi, Luca. What's the biggest challenge you faced when learning Polish, and how did you overcome it? Thank you so much for the work you're doing and for spreading the love for language learning. Thanks a bunch, Loïc, for the interesting question. I think that the biggest challenge when learning Polish or any other language is actually to keep learning over the long term. I remember that I started learning Polish in 2012, I think, after I went to Poznan. And then I was very enthusiastic, but like everything, then the enthusiasm wanes and tapers off a little bit if you don't have the chance of practice in the language. So I do remember that I was not lost, but I was losing motivation because I had been, in Poland, but then I didn't go back. And then I told myself the only way to keep my motivation high for me is to engage with people, to know, to have experiences, to get to know people, to talk with them, to live with them, to interact, eat, and whatnot. And so I decided to go back to Poland and create, make friends with people, and that helped me. So I would say that the language had some challenges, but the main challenge was to stick to the language, because I do believe that if you love a language, no matter how difficult it is or how complicated it is, you're going to learn it if you really want to, speak fluently in order to have meaningful communication with the people you will interact with. Jack C. Hey, Luca, can you tell us what is typically causing you trouble when learning a new foreign language? Remembering words, listening, word order, idioms, and cultural references. Be specific, please. Thanks. I would say that the thing that causes the most problem is actually syntax. So syntax is this nice word that linguists use to describe how you actually formulate your thoughts, how you form sentences in a foreign language. And I found it particularly difficult. I made a video, maybe Kevin can post this video, my failure in learning Japanese or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact title, where I said that one of the most difficult things that kept me from learning fluently, kept me from learning the language and acquiring fluency, was the fact that Japanese has a very unusual, or better, a very different word order. Right? For example, if you say, I want to go to Japan, they say Japan particle go to want. It's a completely different way of forming sentences. And since I had applied the same method to learn any other language, and I was not used to a new aspect, to this new aspect of the specific language family, Japanese actually is a unique language in this regard, but it has a very similar structure. Like, for example, Korean has a similar structure, and Turkish as well. Then I found it quite difficult. So that was the thing that was really difficult. Every new language I learn has some specific quirks or features that make it a little bit more difficult. But all in all, as I said before, if you want to learn this language, you will make it happen no matter what. So now I will address these questions, but now I'll see here some of the questions. Let me see here. Tony Cristo, what are your thoughts on trying to get perfect in your target language? Well, my thought is that perfection is just an illusion. So I think you should ban the word perfect when it comes to human beings and humanity. You can get good, but perfect, there is no such thing as of perfection. So I don't think you should strive for perfection. You should strive to be the better version of yourself every single day. That you can strive for. But as for perfection, I don't think that there's such a concept within the all the human activities. So, and I also believe that perfectionism can actually backfire if you want to be too perfect. Then actually sometimes some people refrain from taking action and engaging with people just out of fear of making mistakes. So if you get into the mindset of banning, of completely eliminating the concept of being perfect or perfectionism, then it's liberating, and you can do a bunch of stuff in language learning and in life in general. So what do you think about Anki? Julio Lozano, I think that's his name. I do not know Anki. I know of the system. I know the space repetition concept behind Anki, Super Memo, and whatnot, but I have never used flashcards, and I'm happy that I've never used flashcards. So I gotta confess that I don't know much about it, but I do have a lot of students that use Anki, and after using the system that I propose, then they move off away from Anki and use a different system. I use notebooks and I use handwriting and a completely different way of reviewing things that is not overwhelming. I have already filmed a video that is going to come out. I don't know when, but probably in a few weeks, about what I do to remember words. So stay tuned. Melissa Zahn, this is a very interesting question. How do you know when you've reached a good enough fluency level in a language to be able to move on to another? Well, I normally know once I've reached a level when I start having conversation and I start actually feeling confident and comfortable with the language. That's a moment where psychologically I tell myself I've reached this level. Actually, I see every single language that you learn as a story that you build, and once you've built a character to a certain point, then the story is good enough, is advanced enough that I can open, so to speak, and I can start a new one. So for me, it's not so much a matter of how many words I know, it's more about the experiences that I have that actually determines whether I consider this language good enough so that I can integrate it in my life. And in my specific case, it's about, having experiences, going to the country, or, finding myself in a situation where I can actually have a conversation without any problem. I remember to this point, actually, an interesting episode that happened a few weeks ago. I've been learning Greek for about 4 years. And I've always, you will see me guys speak with my lovely Greek tutor, because we're going to make a video in Greek. So you will see how I actually engage and how I learn. But I've been speaking mostly with her, and it was funny because a friend of mine, she was here for a little bit, and then she just told me, "Hey, I got a surprise." She rushed into my room and she gave me the telephone, and on the other side there was a Greek guy, and I had to speak Greek off the cuff, right? And I was like, "Oh, this is the first time." We're all scared of the first time we speak in a real life situation, but I happened to have a very nice conversation, albeit a little bit short. But I just realized, damn, I can actually speak Greek. I can communicate outside of this language learning bubble, right? When you have a tutor in a friendly situation, it's easier. But then I found myself, I had to speak the language, and I realized, oh, this is the point where I can move on to another language. So for me, it's more like a psychological thing rather than language prowess, rather than the words I know. It's the experiences that shape my decisions to move to another language. I hope this makes sense. So let me see here. I saw some question about the bidirectional translation, but now I lost it because I have to go up. So let me see. Can you sound native in Italian? I've heard that it's very difficult to sound natives, asks Amalia. I'm going up with the questions. I've heard a couple of people who to me sound completely native in Italian. One is a famous Polish actress. I think her name is Smutniak, if I'm not wrong. I thought she was raised in Italy, but she's actually Polish, and she was raised in Poland. She speaks perfect Italian. Actually, her Italian is so refined that she's an actress, but it's just incredible the way she speaks. And also on the channel Easy Italian, I don't know if you guys know Easy Italian. I'm pretty sure you do. There's a fantastic girl who lives in Milan. She shoots videos in Italian, and her Italian is top notch. You can tell maybe sometimes from her, from the way she formulates certain sentences that she's not Italian. But I do remember that I met her in Bratislava. I didn't even know who she was, and I was just wow, like you sound completely Italian. So it's possible, although rare. But you have to ask yourself, do you want to sound Italian? And why? That's a more important question. So it's possible. There are a few individuals who pull that off, but it's rare. There has to be a special alignment of factors for that to happen. So Luca Jensen, Luca, how's it going? Danish? Do you find yourself wanting to speak Swedish? Hilsna fra Danmark. So greetings from Denmark. Yes, I would say Danish is going well. I'm gonna post a video this week or next week. I don't know if you guys noticed that I started publishing again on longer videos on Thursdays, and then I'm going to publish also the short videos. So we're going to have Mondays and Thursdays. And I'm going to publish a video about my updates for 2021, including Danish. Danish is going well, but it's a little bit in the back burner, meaning that now I'm focusing more on, especially in Greek and Hungarian. I have hired a tutor. I've had around 10 lessons or something like that. And when I speak Danish, yes, I want to speak Swedish. My tutor tells me that I speak Swedish. I mean, I speak Danish with a Swedish accent, which doesn't surprise me at all. So we were talking about the fact that when you already know a language within the same family, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it really helps because sometimes it just completely invent words completely, and they happen to be correct because the two languages are very similar. But I also have a lot of interference because obviously Swedish is dominant and my Danish is still a little bit, let's say not particularly solid just yet. But I do enjoy talking to my tutor, and we have decided, actually, we had a nice chat last week. We would like to show you guys how these conversations unfold. If you guys want to watch, want to see how I actually learn with tutors. I'm preparing stuff with Greek, Hungarian, and Danish. Manam Nazir, Luca, what do you think about For Dummies books for learning languages? I gotta confess, Manan, that I do not know these books. I mean, I know of them, but I've never used them. I've never read them, so I can't tell you much about that. So tell us, please, something about interpreter. Anish Joshi. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe about my career or my experience as an interpreter, but I'm not quite sure. So Cadence Doherty, when it comes to maintaining your languages, guys, you just ask so many interesting questions that it's difficult not to go through them one by one, but I'm trying to do my best to answer all of them. When it comes to maintaining your languages, do you choose to focus more on one for a period of time, a month for Greater Spanish, month for Polish? Thanks, been watching for years. Well, I talked about this before, but fundamentally, I designed a life where I happen to maintain, let's say, between 6 and 8 languages. I actually happen to practice /use /enjoy between 5 and 8 languages every single week. And then I have 4 languages that they are in the back burner. I don't use that much. And then I'm actively learning Greek, Hungarian, and Danish. So there's more or less 8 languages on maintenance mode, 4 languages that are in the back burner that I use very occasionally, but I'd rather say rarely. And then I have 3 languages that I'm actively, learning. So it's not that I do one language and then I forget about the other one. The problem is that the more languages you speak, the more, the easier it gets to learn them on the one hand, but the more difficult it becomes to maintain all these languages. So if you don't design a life where you happen to use these languages on a daily basis, or some of these languages that you have under your belt, then inevitably it's going to be difficult. And trying to focus on one for a month and then trying to focus on the other one for a month is just going to confuse my brain. You have to tell your brain, or you have to signal to your brain somehow that the languages that you have in your head are important. And the best way is to have, frequent contact with these languages, which implies that you should have contact, use these languages. And by using, I don't mean you have to necessarily talk. You can watch the news, you can read something at least every other day. Otherwise, your brain really does get confused. It says, what the hell? Now Spanish for a month and then Polish, and it becomes a little bit messy. So that's the tricky part of being multilingual. After 3, 4, 5 languages, it becomes tricky. Do you use any app to practice your speaking? What's up? So if there is an app, I don't use a language learning app, but I do use WhatsApp. So first thing in the morning, for example, if I want to go, I've been doing this for a little bit. Now I have to change habits again because it's taking too long, but I just wake up, blim, I make the bed, and then I go and grab a cup of coffee. And while I go there, I just send messages in Greek or in Hungarian or some other languages. So I'm practicing the language. I'm sending messages to friends, and then I get messages back. That's my, if you want to call it an app. I don't think that WhatsApp is exactly an app for language learning, but I use it as a tool to practice spoken languages. In the past, maybe some 10 years ago, I was engaging in chats, like I was going to these websites. There's a website, I can't remember the name, but it was bought by Rosetta Stone, and you could chat with everyone. But then I just realized that chatting is too slow, and I very much prefer actually speaking with people and with friends with whom I can engage in a longer conversation. The problem sometimes is that if you chat, there's a lot of people to talk to, but if you chat all the time, you always resort to the same questions and the same answers. What's your name? Where are you from? And that becomes a little bit limiting. So if you, on the other hand, find someone you can have a longer and more meaningful communication, not live necessarily, but you can send messages first thing in the morning or at night or whenever you want, that to me is more useful. But I don't use many language apps. I don't think I've ever used any app in my whole life. I have used platforms like Link, for example, LINGQ, by legendary Steve Kaufman, but I've never really used the app, or any apps that come with the platform. I've always used the platform as a way to grab resources and use them offline. So let me see. How can I integrate the bidirectional translation method into a busy schedule? Amstabom, hey guy, I think you got a very complicated name. I can't pronounce it. So yeah, this is the question that I was trying to answer before, and before everything fell apart and I couldn't find anything else here in the chat. I would say the bidirectional translation, first, it's important to know exactly how that works. I've made a live course about that, and I've realized that a lot of people actually do not know exactly how this works, because I have left some free advice. There are some free videos and articles on the internet, but they're not very they don't go in depth. So that's the first thing. You have to know how to do it. The second thing is that this question goes for any learner and for any language and for every routine. I think that if you want to apply this language, you have to create the mental space to make it happen. The bidirectional translation has a lot of benefits, but the main problem is that if you want it to kick in, if you want it to be very efficient, you have to dedicate between 30 to 45 to even 1 hour a day, 60 minutes a day. And you have to be consistent, and you have to do it for a long period of time. So if you're ready to create that mental space, an actual mental and physical space where you're going to sit down and you're just going to make it happen, then it's possible. Otherwise, if you keep telling yourself that you're too busy, maybe language learning and the bidirectional translation and whatnot, they're not your priority. And I say this all the time to all my friends and students, that if you want to be serious about learning, you have to create that mental space. So if you start by saying, I'm very busy, which is true, everyone is busy, but if you think about it, within our busy lives, we always manage to do things we like. I don't know, hitting the gym, or go to the park, or study, watch a movie, etc., etc. So keep that in mind. Then what else? How do you learn the phonetic sound in a foreign language? I'm not sure about the phonetic. I guess XD flow, right? You wanted to know how to learn the sounds of a foreign language, right? The sound structure of a foreign language, I guess. I'm making assumptions here. I've made a couple of videos about that. So Kevin, maybe you can post the YouTube link and the link to the articles. And I've talked about that a lot in the other Q&A section. So if you want, you can go back and check that. Sorry guys, if I don't spend too much time on this, but some of the questions that keep happening, they keep popping up. So I refer to what I've already said before. Marek Stechny. Hi, Luca. Thank you for all the great great pieces of advice. Thank you, Marek. So, Riccardo Scotti. Ciao, Luca. Sono uno studente ingegneria. I'm going to translate. I'm an engineering student, as you were. And how can you cope with university and language learning at the same time? Well, as I said before, you just have to design a schedule. So in advance, you tell yourself, okay, how much time do I have? How much energy do I have? And you sit down and you plan your time. This goes for anybody, not just as an engineer. Being an engineer, that, or you going for a career as an engineer, you very well know that it's tough. It's tough. It requires a lot of mental energy. But if you plan your time and you tell yourself, I'm going to spend 1 hour in the morning before I go to university or in the evening, then, you can make it happen. I remember that I learned Chinese on the bus while commuting. Well, that was the last year of university. I told myself, I was preparing my thesis. And then how do I find time to learn Chinese? Well, on the bus, 1 hour, 45 minutes or 1 hour there. And I had to thank the Italian traffic jam for that. So I had all the time in the world to learn. Of course, it's not the same thing as just sitting in a quiet room, but I made it happen. So you can make it happen if you know how to structure your time. So what do you think about Asimil? Well, I got a lot of Asimil books there. Maybe you can't see it because the camera is pointing at me here, but I think that it's a fantastic book, and I talk about it all the time, especially when it comes to learning languages from scratch. Sometimes for Asian languages, it's not top-notch. I very much prefer learning European languages with Asimil, so I would not recommend it for Korean or Japanese. Personally, I haven't found it that useful, at least for Japanese, but I think all in all, it's a fantastic language resource. You can start learning any language from scratch. Your microphone is cracking, Luca. I'll try to. I don't know what to do about that. Let me see if I stay, with this distance. If anything changes. What book do you recommend to learn English? There's a lot of books I recommend to learn English. I would start using Asimil, but if you're asking this question, I guess that you already speak English. So I would say just read a bunch of books and read a bunch of articles on things that you can understand so that you can improve. That's what I would say. I don't think you need necessarily a book to learn English specifically, but a book books or resources or stuff you can read, interesting stuff that interests you, to expand your knowledge, and you, as a consequence of that, you expand your language, your level of English. Louis Mook, ciao Luca, a che livello sei arrivato con l'ungherese? What level do you have in Hungarian? I am not sure what level, but I can have conversations without a problem with my tutor. The problem with Hungarian is that, as you will see, I think that it's not going to be the next one, but probably in 2 weeks, so you will see me speaking Hungarian. You'll be able to judge because there's going to be subtitles in Hungarian and in English. And I feel comfortable speaking Hungarian right now, having conversations with my tutor. I was in Hungary a lot of times. I'm still a little bit frustrating about not being able to understand the news, and I still find it difficult, for example, to read books. So I haven't gotten to an extremely advanced level, but it's because of the way I'm more in maintenance mode with Hungarian. So I do speak Hungarian twice a week with my tutors for 30 minutes. I kind of review the notes, but not that much. So it's really maintenance mode, and my level just got, kind of stalled a little bit, but I'm waiting for the borders to open so that I can charge to Hungary. And my dream is actually to live in Budapest because I'm absolutely infatuated with how beautiful the city is. So as I always do, right now I keep it like I maintain this level until I find the opportunity to make my level, to improve my level by living the language. And mind you, going to Hungary means that if I go to Hungary and live in Hungary, I I will try to do anything and everything in order to make friends with Hungarians and speak the language and have as many experiences as possible, because that, again, is what makes us fluent. That the amount of experiences we have, the amount of people we talk to, the amount of times we take a walk, we go to the restaurant, we go to the cinema, we have all sorts of experiences. That creates a storyline in our brain. And I think that when we speak a language, our brain keeps this storyline together and gives us a sort of identity. That for me means fluency more than the words that you know or the sentences that you can utter. So, Axi Ruiz Vicente, how many languages would you say that you really master and dominate? As I said before, there's no such thing as perfection or mastering anything. A language learning is like trying to master a language is trying to grab water with your hands, falling water with your hands. You just can't, because a language changes all the time. Not only does it change all the time, it changes across the globe. Different people speak in different ways, but it changes with time. So every time there's new words, or there are some words or cultural references that change, certain generations speak in a certain way. So it's a very elastic and entity that changes with time, space, and whatnot. So there is no such thing as mastering a language. You can master maybe the phonetic system of a language, of a given part of a language, or a specific dialect of a language, or the way a certain language is spoken, but there is no such thing as mastering a language. Having said that, I would say that I feel comfortable. I have created a storyline in my head. I feel fluent. I feel comfortable speaking around 10 languages because I lived multiple situations. I got to know people. I lived a lot of experiences, and I created the storyline in my head. But again, I don't master these languages. Not even Italian, and the funny thing about this is, the funny part about this is that, when we think that we know a language, then we are we're confronted with very specialized texts of, I don't know, within astronomy or specific things. We realize that there are so many technical terms that, we know just a tiny portion of the language. It might sound surprising, but with a tiny portion of all the existing words and all the existing vocabulary within a language, we can do a lot. So again, I think a lot of people are obsessed with this perfectionism, or perfecting, or mastering, but there's no such thing as mastering. The most important thing for me, at least my humble opinion, is to be able to communicate well in a language. When people, for example, ask me, or I see some people saying Luca speaks English like a native, or he doesn't. I don't think I speak like exactly like a native when it comes to speaking any foreign language apart from Italian, but it doesn't matter to me. I always strive to be the better version of myself in terms of language skills, or in terms of personality and whatnot. But I recognize that I will never be perfect. I will never sound like a native in any foreign language, and it doesn't really matter. So, Byron Williams, where did you get your graded readers for French? Vos bouquins bilingues. Well, I think I got it at Fnac. Fnac is like in Paris. I got a lot of them at Fnac when I was directly there. If you write bouquin bilingue or livre bilingue on Amazon, you can find quite a few. But at Fnac, there were a lot of them. So I hope that answers your question, because I was directly in Paris, and it was much easier to find these books, especially because in France they produce them. In other languages or in other countries they don't, or they do less. So fewer, actually. They produce fewer books of this kind. So let me see. Chat only in English, please, says Berta. Berta will tell you off if you don't write in English. So let me see here. Andrei Ivanov. Hello, Luca. What background one must have before starting extensive reading? I'm not sure what you mean by background. I mean, if you have to be an engineer and an astronaut to start extensive reading, but you don't have to have any background. I would say that when it comes to, language skills, when it comes to extensive reading, maybe that was your question. You have to have a solid base in the language, especially if you want to engage in books that are, long, and that are, for example, literature. fiction and nonfiction alike. They're difficult. So you have to have a solid base in the language. But I think that to cover the gap, or to cover the bridge, I think you should find resources like bilingual resources, or things you can understand that are a little bit, like these bilingual books that I have in French. I don't know if I can find one. Yes. I think this one, for example, Byron was asking me before. I hope that you can see it from the camera, because this is a typical bilingual book. I'm not sure that you can see it here. Maybe you can see it from here, but let me show you the cover. So this is Edgar Allen Poe, Trois Nouvelles, three short stories. This is not actually that easy of a book to read, but it's great because you have it, you have bilingual, you have the bilingual version, you have also the notes explaining. So this is something that you can start with. You also have some other books like this one. I think I showed it before. This is very cool. These are graded readers. So I would say if you want to delve into reading more extensively, you might want to use graded readers. Look them up. Just write graded readers on the internet. You will find what this is about. But the bottom line is just to build your capacity of reading step by step, and then you can start reading real books, because reading real books, especially literature, narrative, is particularly difficult. Nonfiction is a little bit easier for a number of reasons. Before I delve into other questions, I have here a few others. Hans Law, I think Hans Law also really wanted his questions answered. He also was the first one to post this question here. So it's also on the paper. So Hans, so you're still quite young. Thank you. I'm 40. I'm not sure if I'm particularly young, but yes, I'm young. Yes, say I'm young. Which languages of those you don't speak now would you like to speak 20, 30 years from now? Do you have some magic number of languages you've been aiming for? 20 or 25? I don't think about languages in terms of numbers. I think about the number of experiences and the number of things that speaking languages can bring about in my life. So I got to tell you the truth. I don't have any number in mind. I don't want to. I have never told myself, hey, by the age of 80, I'm just going to be speaking 50 languages. Numbers are not really relevant to me. I will learn the languages along the path. It will happen. I know that I will not stop now. I know that I will learn more languages. And I know that, again, languages choose me and not the other way around. I will let languages choose me along my existential path. So, again, I will learn a bunch of languages, but it doesn't really, the number doesn't really matter. And also, how many languages do you think one intelligent person can speak on a native level? 5, and on C1, 10, and on B1, 30. It really depends on what you mean by intelligent person. Intelligence is a really multifaceted concept. What does it mean to be intelligent? And there's so many factors. I believe more like in circumstances and, life circumstances and your will of learning, your attitude, and a number of other important factors. I made a video about that. I think how many languages can a man speak, and I think Kevin can put the link in the video in the description. I'm sorry, on the chat. But as I said that, depending, I thought. I had a thought experiment, and I thought about a lady or a guy, a human being traveling every year to a different country and spending time learning the language before he goes and lives in country. Maybe this person can learn to speak 30 languages fluently. But the problem is always that although I do believe that the brain has an amazing capacity of learning and we could hold so much information in our head, the problem is that we're limited in time and space, and our memory, which is connected with space, is limited. So the more languages you learn, the more languages you have to maintain and speak and whatnot. So there is an upper limit, but this limit is really loosely defined. It's very fuzzy because of the number of factors involved. And I think at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. How many we can think about it. We can ask ourselves that. It's the human mind, and as humans we like asking questions about our limits. But the reality is that language learning is not like, hey, what's a record of whatever, the number of meters a man has jumped, the number of meters, the mountain, the highest mountain that a human being has climbed, and whatnot. You can't really measure language learning the way you do these things. So at the end of the day, I think you can learn a bunch of languages and you can speak a bunch of languages well, as long as you find yourself in the right circumstances. And it's rare for an individual to speak more than 10, 15 languages fluently, because of the limits of time, space, and memory. So, Nicola Storgato, I've read Il Barone Rampante based on your suggestion. Can you suggest me another great Italian classic? Dai. I don't know, Nicola. You didn't say if you liked Il Barone Rampante, but my suggestion would be to read all Italo Calvino's books, because they're just amazing. Start with those ones. Going to have enough to read for the next 6 months. Then you can ask me what's the next author I should read in the next Q&A, or maybe in 5 Q&As. So let me see. Arianna, hey Luca, have you ever thought about starting a language podcast? Yes, I have, but there's so many things going on in the background that I'm focusing on, on other projects, but it's been in my mind, the back of my mind, for quite some time, and I would be really glad to start a language podcast, but one thing at a time. I think probably it's a project for 2022. I just told myself this year, just with my team, we just brainstorm and said one thing at a time, because my problem is that sometimes I'm so enthusiastic that I would like to do podcasts and I would like to do videos, and then life gets in the way, and you realize that time is limited and you have so many resources, and then you have to choose and focus on one thing at a time. But it's an excellent idea, Arianna, and sooner or later it is going to happen. So let me see. Vivian, thanks so much for the amazing content. Helped me a lot with English, Portuguese, and now Romanian. How would you go about less documented languages? I would say one piece of advice that I give for people who want to learn exotic languages is to use the amazing tools that the internet provides to find a native speaker. With that native speaker, you can, native speakers are incredible resources. We focus a lot on which platform, which book, which resource, but actually when you talk to a native speaker and you ask the right questions, they can point to amazing resources, documentaries, things. You can even ask them to create your own material in that language. For example, with a friend of mine, I'm asking her to create Serbian stuff in Serbian for me, because I've just realized that in Croatian you have a lot of stuff, but in Serbian less. Serbo-Croat is the same language, but 2 different versions. And I just asked her, hey, can you help me create the material? So I would say and Serbian is not even an exotic language, it's kind of exotic, but not that exotic. So I would say if you have the time, just do some research and find one native speaker, 1 or 2 through the internet, and then ask them politely if you learn by doing the stuff that you like. So if you like listening to music, if you like watching Italian movies, if you like literature, if you like anything Italian, and you spend time exploring that stuff through Italian, then you will learn as a consequence of that. So let me see. Marco Cuevas, look, I've developed the habit of reading along with the audiobook. Do you think this is harmful? I think it's fine. If you want to read along, that's great. You're reading, listening, and reading along. So you're killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Although, truth be told, I would say that also what you could do is to listen and read at the same time. And maybe sometimes you can engage in this like reading along. But it's great. I think it's good. You should keep at it. So Samuel Fentus, you're the best. You motivate me a lot. Thank you so much. And you guys motivate me along with all these interesting questions. So it's mutual. Can you recommend any media in Polish? Jay Hesse, music, podcast, YouTube channel, etc. So now off the cuff, I can say that there's a lot of stuff. Polymate, maybe Kevin, well, Polymate is like with a Y. Polymate is a very interesting channel. Makłowicz, just write Makłowicz. It's an amazing guy, goes around. I just watched a video while I was eating. Makłowicz is a guy who just shows the world and the traditions and cooking, and he talks about stuff. Now he has his own stuff because he was on the national channel, and he has his own website. He's just a phenomenal guy. I have actually, if you go to the resources on the website, on our website, lucalamberto.com, you can see some stuff. But now, off the cuff, I'm trying to think about all the nice YouTube videos. If you want, what we can do is we can post them all in the resource sections, because I have a lot. I've been consuming a lot of resources in Polish, so I have at least 5 or 6 YouTube channels for you. Historia bez cenzury. It's like history without censorship, literally translated. That's another funny one. This one doesn't have subtitles for most of the time. My suggestion is to look for stuff that has subtitles. Anyway, due to the fact that, to the lack of time, I can't list all the resources, but we will give me a nice idea. We're going to add all the stuff, because there's really a lot of stuff there, podcasts and YouTube videos and TV shows and whatnot. So we're going to put them in the section. Make sure that you check the section within the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Michel de Witt, during your first live Q&A, you told us you were going to Poland this summer. You said it was the most interesting country for you at the moment. How come? It's because I just love Poland. I'm going to be in Krakow for 3 weeks. Then I'm going to Łódź, I'm going to Warsaw, and I'm going to go around. I just like being in Poland. I like the way I feel. I believe that we feel differently. Different places make us feel in a different way. And in Poland, I just feel fantastic for a number of reasons. So I like speaking the language. I want to improve the language. I have a lot of friends there. I love the country in general. I love the way I feel in Poland. Hence, there's an important thing too. It's scorching in Rome. So in Poland, it's much better in July and August, and every time I go there, it's just like so relaxing compared with here, because in Rome is beautiful, but in July and August, stay away from it because it's like 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know in Fahrenheit, but these reasons and many others push me to go to Poland every summer, or almost every summer. So what else? Let me see if you have any other questions here. I think you have a lot. So before I go through these questions, I wanted to read a few questions here. Oh, by the way, yeah, interesting. Yoga with a son. Would you recommend, speaking of Rome, would you recommend living in Rome for a polyglot? My short answer is yes, in the sense that Rome is a cosmopolitan city. So you have compared with small villages, there's a lot of foreigners here, but it's not as cosmopolitan as Madrid or London or Paris. So, but again, I don't think you would move to Rome just to speak foreign languages, and also depends on how you live. So in Rome, even if it's less cosmopolitan than, say, Paris, if you live a solitary life, then that's what counts is the number of connections you make and how you live. That's what counts the most. But of course, being in any European being in any European city is more than enough to get to know a lot of people if you know how to get to know people. So, debunker of fake polyglots. This is a provocative question. What do you think of fake YouTube polyglots like Wouter? I gotta confess, I made a video about that, and I said that I think that questioning whether a polyglot is fake or not is a waste of time, is a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. I think that Wouter, like anybody else, everybody has something to contribute to. So if you decide to look at any video on YouTube with the attitude of learning something instead of criticizing, then you're going to grow. If instead you spend a lot of time criticizing, and you're not going to spend a lot of time learning. Anything that you do, any negative activity you engage in, or any negative thought you have, is less time and less mental space for positive stuff you can use to grow to grow in life. So let me see here. Hey, Luca, could you please hold a stream in different languages you master perfectly? As I said, I don't master anything, but I do speak Spanish well, and that's the next one. Arsen, I said it at the beginning of this Q&A. If I'm not wrong, and I said it at the end of the other Q&A, that the next one is going to be, next 5 probably are going to be in Spanish. Then we're going to do a batch in Italian, then in French, and then all the other languages. So let me see here. So many people learning German here, Leila says. Yeah, there's a lot of people learning German. I have a lot of students, a lot of Italian students learning German who migrated to Switzerland or to Germany or Austria. It's amazing the number of Italians, the number of native of foreigners, of people who are learning German. And personally, I love teaching, training people. I'm not teaching anything. I'm training people to learn German. It's one of my favorite languages together with Russian. Let me see. Matteo Sposato, how do you tackle learning a language that uses a different alphabet? Do you have any tricks that are specific to this? Thanks for your videos. Matteo, I do have a couple of tricks up my sleeve. One suggestion is to download whenever you can a keyboard so that you can type as soon as possible. Then it really depends on the language. For example, for Japanese and Chinese, I would not start trying to handwrite unless this is a specific skill that you want to build, because it takes so much time. It's a skill on its own. But the thing I would suggest is that you download a keyboard so that you reduce the friction of typing. And I do know one thing or two about the friction of typing. I always recall and talk about, retell this episode when I started learning Russian. Then I was just painstakingly putting every single letter in 2004. I still feel like a fool thinking about that. But that, I almost ran the risk of not, literally not continuing. You have to find ways to reduce the friction and to make stuff fun. So once you download a keyboard, it's possible, for example, if you go to Google Input Tools, or if you have a Mac or a PC nowadays, you can very easily install a keyboard, and then make sure that you go on Google, you write layout, Thai layout, Russian layout, and then you print it, you keep it next to you, and you play. You type sentences instead of typing simple words, sentences that you like, you form sentences so you have fun, and you start learning in a natural way. That's what I would do when it comes to learning a language with a different script. When you start typing, you start also memorizing the stuff. And when it comes to reading stuff, I would use transliteration. I would learn I would focus on building a good relationship, a good bond, a solid bond between how the language is spoken and how the transliteration system works. So the transliteration, in a way, it's a language on its own. So for example, just to give an example, Z and H in zh in Chinese is pronounced zh. So in your mind, when you see the transliteration, see the pinyin, it's called bofomofo, it's called in Taiwan. So you see the transliteration. Then in your mind, when you listen to it, your mind starts building this bond between the sound zh, which is a retroflex sound. Your tongue touches the palate, zh, and this Z and H, just to give an example. So reading and listening a lot, using the transliteration first, and typing a lot for fun, and reproducing sentences of the stuff that you read and listen to, and build upon that. If you want to learn how to handwrite, then you can do it if you want to, but it's going to take more time, and it's a specific skill on its own, especially when it comes to languages that use ideograms, for example, like Chinese and Japanese, which are the most difficult ones in the world in this regard. Even languages such as like Korean are not that difficult, or Arabic or Russian or Greek or Georgian. So, hey, Luca, with that much of speaking practice, what's your verbal top speed? Have you ever tried to measure it? It's usually syllable per second. In Spanish, I think I speak even faster. In English, especially now, I'm speaking slowly, but in real life, I actually speak way faster in all the languages. But I don't think that speed is that important. I actually like. I like measuring my typing speed. I realized I type very fast, or way faster than the average. But as for the the speed at which I speak, I've never really measured. But it's an interesting question. Never thought about it. So So let me see. How to learn German. Give some suggestions and channels to learn. Is it possible to learn 2 languages at a time? Please reply. Love from India. How to learn German is a very broad question, like how to learn a language. So, we don't have time to go specifically into this, but I've made a video about how I've learned German. So you have all the answers there because it's a story, my story with German. It's in German, but it has English and German subtitles. But the bottom line is that if you want to start any language, and German is one of them, you just have to find a good resource to start with that is comprehensible. In your case, I would suggest Assimil German is just fantastic. You can start with that for 3 months. You can go back and forth. You can experiment the way to use it. I normally use my Bi-Directional Translation technique, and by the way, there's a big surprise coming in the next month, and that's why we're running, we're grappling with my team also with a lot of projects. And use a way to use this language learning resource well to build a solid base, and then you can start venturing into using platforms and whatnot, always making sure that you create your own language learning material that is fun for you. If you want to know more about the resources for German, you can go to lucalampera.com. We have a bunch of resources there for beginners and intermediate learners, YouTube channels included, and we're going to add more and more as time goes by. So, Fabrizio Messi, interesting name. What did you choose to learn American English instead of British English? Sorry for my English. English is great. Just because at the ripe age of 12, I came into contact with a lot of Native American English speakers, basically Americans. My first tutor was from Chicago, and then I consumed. She gave me a lot of homework, and I was watching American movies all the time, and then I also was briefly in a relationship with an American girl. They're all from Chicago. All these girls from Chicago. And that's how I've learned English. I didn't really choose anything. It's just American English that chose me, or the ladies chose me, and they spoke to me in American English. So, Eliseo, what has been the most difficult language feature you've faced so far? I said it before at the beginning. It's syntax. So it's syntax and Japanese, in particular, the way they form sentences. And that threw me off and made the whole thing very difficult. Again, I think that Kevin has left a link to the video. So why I failed learning Japanese, or my failure with Japanese. I don't remember the title. Why do you consider that reading literature is more difficult than reading essays? Marco Cuevas asked another question. I think it's because narrative implies, the very, depending also on the writer, descriptive language that you don't find so much in nonfiction books. If you read a book, if you read 2 books, one of nonfiction and one fiction, you will quickly realize, in a language that you still don't master well, you will quickly realize what I mean. Sorry, I'm not going very much in depth with this because we still have 5 minutes. Actually, we are going to do some more, given also the amount of people and the amount of amazing questions you're asking me, guys. You're great. We will keep this. We will keep going for 15 more minutes. So we'll finish at 6:10 p.m. Central European time. So let me see. Shang, do you prefer studying a language by yourself or by taking courses? I prefer learning a language by myself, but I don't disdain going to a language school. Actually, I've never gone to a language school, but this summer in September, Mr. Corona allowing, I should go to Greece and spend 2 weeks in Syros on this island to do a couple of weeks in a language school course. So I do it more, to spend time in Greece and get to know people than anything. But I spend a lot of time learning by myself and then having private tutors. And then, if I want to, like in this case, I can go to a language school, but language school is a cherry on top. So I don't follow courses online basically or offline. Any advice to learn English vowel sounds? Mani, you're just giving me an idea. I don't have time to go through this now, again, because we're running out of time, but there are some resources that I have shared with my tutors. There's a very interesting diagram, or there's a very interesting system, which is alternative to the standard, the traditional one. And we're going to post this resource in the English resource section that we're building, because we're figuring out actually, and thank you for, to some of you for pointing that out, that we have a lot of languages, but we don't have English. So we took things for granted, and we will post some stuff for improving your English pronunciation, grammar, and syntax, and vocabulary, and whatnot, and other resources. Eden, what are your thoughts on the Pimsleur method? Yes, English is hard to pronounce. That's true. One of the most difficult languages in the world. My thoughts are that I do not know Pimsleur. I've never used it. I've used it very briefly for a little bit, but I can't really say much because I don't know it in depth, unfortunately. So let me see. There's a lot of questions pouring in. So do you like to be taught or autodidact? David Rodriguez. Both. I like learning by myself, and I like talking and interacting with people, and especially with my tutors, and getting feedback. So I think both are important. But language learning is a personal road. I engage a lot in activities that I do by myself, but then at the end of the day, if I look back, all the languages that I've learned to fluency are languages in which I've engaged in all sorts of activities, learning by myself and learning through and with others. So let me see. I think I wanted to answer one more question here. Actually, Despondent Being, which is a very interesting name, asked me a bunch of questions. I'm going to answer 3 out of 4. The first one is, it would take me an hour to reply to that question. How do you memorize so many words in different languages and don't forget them? The short answer is that I design a system where I tend to use these languages, and in our brain we have a mechanism which is called the survival of the busiest. The more you use something, the stuff that we use thrives, stuff that we do not use withers, exactly like a flower. So I make sure that on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, I try to use as many languages as I can, where I try to come into contact with these languages by building habits like reading newspapers, books, or engaging in certain activities, watching the news, speaking with friends, so that I can keep the storyline active. And if I keep the storyline active in my brain, then it holds together the vocabulary. We tend to think as vocabulary as all these like pieces of content that you have to remember that fly everywhere. But remember, and I keep going back to this concept of the storyline. Memory works. We are very good with stories, and speaking language is building a story in your head. So keep that in mind. And the second thing is that I have a system that allows me to review things efficiently, that is not overwhelming. I use a system that is made of fundamentally, I use notebooks and a few other things here and there. And I found this to be especially useful and efficient for me, and also with the with the students that have specifically asked me about this system. I will make a video about that in the future. I think I already filmed one, or we are in the process of filming it. Are you not interested in learning any ancient language? Would you take on one, and if so, then which one? I learned Latin at school. I have a couple of books here. I love Latin. I started learning modern Greek, but then I gave up because the Agostini course for German came out, and I thought German might be more useful. How does and I have an Asimil with hieroglyphs for ancient Egyptian, but I don't know. Maybe I'm going to tackle that, but not now, not in the near future. How does learning, progressing, and maintaining so many languages mess with your life in other aspects? Disadvantages of being a polyglot. The max level of languages you can learn to a high level, say C1, C2, and maintain them. This is a very similar question to the one that was asked before by Hans Solo, but something along those lines. And my answer is that there are no disadvantages. There are just advantages of speaking multiple languages. The only disadvantage, if you want to call it that, is that you have to maintain a number of languages. The more languages you learn, the more languages you have to maintain. And that entails that you have to make choices. And if you do not think the language learning is an integral or an important part of your life, for that matter, then your languages are going to suffer. And maybe you're going to suffer because you don't speak these languages, or you're losing these languages, say, or you don't speak these languages as you used to speak them before. But the bottom line is that there are no disadvantages to being a polyglot. There are just advantages in terms of your mental prowess, your ability to process thought, to speak, to understand the different nuances. I wouldn't go so far as to say to understand every nook and cranny of any culture, because it's impossible. But there are so many, you reap so many benefits from learning a language that is just amazing. And if you learn 2 or 3 or 4, then all doors open up. The world is at your feet. Maybe not the universe, but at least the world. And I'm going to read another question by Suhaib. I think that's his name. Sorry for butchering it. Is it a bit easier for people who are fluent in English to learn Dutch? And they say that Dutch is one of the easiest languages in the world for native English speakers. And they're very similar. So yes, if you already speak Dutch, English fluently, whether it's your native language or a foreign language, then learning Dutch is definitely going to be, not a piece of cake, but it's not going to be that difficult. Dutch pronunciation can be tricky, but apart from that, I think the language is pretty straightforward. Let me read another couple of questions from this very same paper here. Luca, make a video recommending us books, please, Ali Kali. And we are building, I think Kevin is working on it right now. We're building a book resource section on the lucalamparello.com. So stay tuned, check it next week, because we're going to put my favorite books. We're starting with 30 books that have changed my life in terms of productivity, language learning, language in general, psychology, and whatnot. So the books that have made the person I am today, together with other things. And you can check those starting from next week, probably starting from tomorrow, if we if Ken gets to finish in time. Last question here. Last 2 questions, actually. Are you available on Itokai or Italki? I never know how to pronounce this thing. I am not on Itokai. I gave my own one-on-one coaching sessions. You can find the services and all the information about that in the lucalamparello.com in the service section. Sorry for the dog barking. I don't know if you can hear it. It always starts at 6. Just amazing. Every single day. What are your language plans for the next 3 years? I don't know. As I said, I'm going to learn Serbian in September, most probably. And then, let's see what life brings about. But I already bought a book in Hebrew, Turkish, Arabic, and we will see. Are you planning to make more videos with other polyglots? The answer is yes. And we'll see with whom. If you have any suggestions, guys, just write them there, and we will see, because I know a lot of polyglots, but maybe there are other polyglots and interesting people out there I am not aware of, and please let me know. And from this piece of paper, and then I'm gonna come back to you guys. Mali Fitness, my friend, here's my question. What are your thoughts on language fossilization? Is it real? Fossilization or fossilization? I'm not sure. Is it real? If so, should we delay speaking until after receiving massive input? Thanks. I'm not sure what you mean exactly by language fossilization, maybe in terms of mistakes, because you're addressing 2 different things. I would say that, as the second part of the question, I would say when it comes to speaking, it depends on a number of factors. I would say talk whenever you want to talk, when you feel ready. And depending on the language, if you're learning a language which is very similar to your own native language, or a language you already have under your belt, maybe you can wait for 3 months before speaking. And if it's a language that is more difficult, more distant, maybe it can take 6 months, 9 months, even 1 year, even 2 years, if you don't feel like speaking from the very beginning. The bottom line is, before you talk, in order to speak, you have to speak a lot. But before you talk, make sure that you get enough input, even if with languages that are very, very similar, like Portuguese in my case is an Italian. I would say at least 3 months of massive input before you start talking, because you can't get something out if it doesn't first get in somewhere. So I'm going to address a few other questions here before I leave you guys. Richard Simcoe, a classic. Hans Martinez said, "Yes, I recently talked with Richard, and we've been toying with the idea of making another multilingual video for you guys if you find it interesting. But we don't want to talk just about how we learn languages. If you have, the moment we decide to do it, we'll ask you, hey guys, what kind of questions do you want? And if you want, we can do it live. This is another idea, to do this finally live, where you ask a question, I answer, he answers, and then we get back to you guys. Kev Jackson says pronunciation can be fossilized. Yes. I think that Mali was asking two different questions. One is whether to speak at the beginning or wait, and then fossilization is about pronunciation. I would say in that fossilization does exist, and it doesn't only concern pronouncing, like pronunciation, but also any other aspect of the language. So in order to avoid that, I would always say, like, prevent is always better than cure. Prevent is always better than curing, meaning that if you start from the get-go and you start addressing some peculiar and important aspects of the phonetic fabric of a language, and then you get them right, then everything goes downhill. Everything is downhill, meaning that everything is going to be easier. On the other hand, if you get the wrong patterns, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to fix them along the path and with time, because they get more and more fossilized. And human beings are not very good they're very good at learning, but they're not really good at unlearning things to learn them in a different way. Let me see, Luca, what do you think? What do you think lots of people are mentioning the so-called fake polyglots? Because there's a lot of people talking about nowadays fake polyglots, or people who are kind of busting others or trying to put down others because they think they're like selling stuff, or because they're not as good as they think they are. And I stick to my guns here, and meaning reiterating what I was saying before. I think it's really irrelevant. I think everybody has something to offer, and nobody can be scammed without your permission, in a way. Like, for example, if you buy a course from a guy, right, you think he's the ultimate polyglot, and then you find out that his material is not as good, then you can always ask for a refund, and that's it. I always believe that instead of complaining, people should focus more on learning and on the positive aspect of what people can offer. But that's my view, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. If people want to spend time talking about fake polyglots, so be it. But to me, it's not that interesting. I'm Canadian. In school, we were taught to write French and not speaking. How can I improve, like, specifically pronunciation? Well, you talk to people and you get feedback. I would hire a tutor. The best would be to hire a coach, or to hire a person and to ask them to correct your feedback, and then to re-listen and to try to get your feedback. You to try to improve, leverage that feedback in order to improve. I know it's a little bit simplistic. I have made, maybe Kevin can share this, I've shared, again, videos and articles about how to improve your pronunciation. So please check my YouTube channel and my website for articles and podcasts and YouTube videos related to pronunciation. Lea in Garbatella, we know each other, I mean, on the internet, and I know you live in Rome, not far from where I live. Devo andare via, grazie mille per l'energia positiva, grazie a te e grazie a tutti voi. Thanks for to everyone for being so awesome. There's a lot of recurring questions about remembering new words, and I've talked about this during this section. So I think, guys, that as much as I would like to stay here the whole day, because this is very interesting, I think I have to go. My team and I have to go. And thank you so much for all the interesting questions. Now, as I said, we're going to start, these Q&A live sessions in other languages. The next one is going to be in Spanish, because a lot of people have requested that. As much as I would like to do a super duper culty multilingual Q&A session, it's going to be not very it's not feasible for a number of reasons, because if I speak a language and the other people don't understand, but I will start making them in different languages. Again, thank you so much for all the questions. I heard something, you really want to date him, Leila says to Nicola Sturgato. I don't know what she is referring to exactly. So la próxima en italiano, por favor. As I said, Mili, I'm just going to do this. The next one is going to be in Spanish, and then I think the next one will be in the next batch of 5 will be in Italian. But we can always decide to do one in English, one in Spanish, one in Italian. We will see. Guys, it's been amazing. I love you for all the enthusiasm, the right, all these wonderful comments and questions and curiosities that you have. And thanks for being around. So numerous, like you're 244 as of now. It's just amazing. I hope this was useful. As always, I do it my team and I, we do everything we can to help you guys in your language learning endeavors and to give you as much advice as we can. And I will see you in a month. Again, I'm going to be traveling. I don't know if I can use this beautiful Canon that I'm using here. I might have to stick to a camera that is not just as good, but I will make it happen somehow and from some part of Europe. Thanks so much. Have a fantastic day and rest of the day wherever you are or the night. And I will talk to you soon. Bye. And as always, thanks for watching and happy language learning.